Like many of you, I enjoy moving through the universe in 3 dimensions. The same cannot be said for the player character in my game though, because he is just a series of 2D sprites superimposed onto another 2D sprite. And that's fine. You can imply depth by making the character move back and forth and making them bigger and smaller.
These are small, but the ones out there are far away.
But it's not great, especially when for a very long time in my game's development the guy has only had 4 walking directions. Lots of point and click games have these 4 directions and it is fine, but it's always been on my list to come back and add 4 more so that he has 8 directional walk cycles, including the diagonals. And the main reason for that is that in the very first scene of the game, the player is kind of deposited at the start in such a place that the only place you can go is diagonally left or right, really, or the things you're going to click on are diagonally left and right. And up until now that has looked like this, which is fine again, but it's always kind of bugged me how much vertical sliding he does whilst walking ostensibly to the right or the left. So I figured with my list of jobs dwindling now and very few places left to hide, I thought I would try adding in those extra walk cycles, which I will tell you about just after I say, if you like point and click games, do you want to wishlist my game? It's fun and it's going to be funny and intriguing. Even if you don't intend on buying it exactly, wishlists kind of act as like the juice for Steam's big water cannon that they fire upon people when your game is launched. So the more wishlists you have, the more the algorithm kind of shines upon you, I think. So yeah, if you have a second and a Steam account, there's a link down there. It'd be great if you could wishlist it. Thanks. I've just literally snapped the ring light off of my tripod, so this is going well already. So the way my character has been set up for a really long time is that he has 4 walk cycles, but he also has 4 directions. He faces away from the camera and talks, he faces towards the camera and talks, he faces left and right. But left and right have kind of been surrogates for diagonal down, left and right, because he stands sort of third way on, and that was actually the very first picture of him that I drew, was this third way on sprite for him. So I thought that those kind of forward left forward right directions would be fine as a starting point for those forwards diagonal walks, but there was a gaping hole in terms of backwards diagonal walks, and so recently I've been setting about fixing this. The first job I did was to figure out how the hell you draw a person facing diagonally backwards. And you might be thinking, you've designed this character, you should know what he looks like in every angle. But that's not really true. I don't really think even the left and right walking things particularly match up with his forward facing face. But I just think the brain can be tricked by when you make the character turn and it suddenly looks like that. You go, okay, I guess that is what he looks like. On that principle, I just had to start mucking around with what a diagonal backwards look might be for him. And this did not take a short amount of time.
Took forever.
I ended up just going over and over and over his face details over and again to try and figure out what that even looks like. And in fact, if I was to face away from you now, you probably can't even see my eyes. But I figured you would need to in a cartoon. So he has very shrunken eyes, for example. I couldn't work out whether you would see much of his nose or all of his nose. And then the other thing is, because I'm an idiot, ages ago I decided he should have very asymmetrical features. His hair, for example, goes in one direction. He has a watch on one hand and a pocket on the other. And all these kind of things have really tripped me up in the long run. But it is what it is. But it does mean that when I'd finally settled on upright and what that would look like, up left was not just a mirror of that. It meant I had to change his hair to imply that weird fringe quiff thing that he has. Got there in the end and animated him talking, which is fine. It was just kind of moving his head back and forth, adding some mouth stuff. That's easy. Walking is less so. And it's here where Past Me has actually done me a bit of a favour, because at some point in the past that I don't really recall, I had started to draw down right as a walking cycle. I thought it was okay as a start. Like, obviously it's janky where his leg parts are cutting through his body, but I knew that could be tidied up. I knew that could be reversed and then have his head and details changed. So I thought, let's come back to that because it seems easy, and let's do the walking backwards things. And here is where I really struggled. I just kept doing it and then deleting it and doing it and deleting it. And so ultimately I thought, I know what I'll do here. I will take my right walk cycle legs, position them underneath him, and then just distort that as a group. on a diagonal axis so that it kind of looks like the legs are going that way, and then I can use this top half of this new body that I'd drawn to kind of fill in the gaps and then paint over the rougher bits, and also make kind of shoes get a bit smaller when they go away and bigger when they come near the camera. And so I did that, and it looked okay, I think. Weirdly not as good as the sort of more hand-drawn one I'd done in Procreate some months or years ago. But it looked okay to me enough that I decided to go ahead and duplicate it, do that nonsense with switching his head for every frame and exporting it. And then for the forward ones, take that thing that Past Me had done at some point and cover up the cracks, duplicate it, replace his head, change his watch for every frame, all this kind of stuff that you shouldn't have to do. Always make a symmetrical character. Anyway, that left me with, 8 walk cycles, or 4 new ones at least, as well as those 2 reverse facing talking animations. So it was time to get them into the game. And this process was one of those things where you discover a thing or a tool or a button that you really wish you'd discovered many years back. So for a little bit of context, I use Pixelmator as an alternative to Photoshop because I don't want to pay for Adobe's nonsense subscriptions. Pixelmator is great. It lacks one core ability though, which is to export individual frames. So my process has always been to import all of the frames and then center them around this kind of grid, and then manually untick each one, tick one, and export them, because there's no like batch export option in Pixelmator. Also, I thought, it turns out with a little bit more googling, there is an Apple script thing. I'd never even heard of Apple script. I don't know what I'm doing. Someone had made this thing where you open it in Apple script and press play, and it basically goes, where do you want to save all these PNGs, and it goes blah 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 blah, blah, and like basically them all out, and it saved me so much time, and I wish I had this years ago. Anyway, exported all those PNGs, I went into my player prefab and started adding these extra animations. So if you're not familiar with this or Unity's workflow or whatever, you can basically dock the animation panel at the bottom so that when you create animations and play them, you can watch the guy do it in the top screen and tweak things until you're happy with them, basically. So added those in, then told Adventure Creator, hey, this guy faces 8 directions now, not 4. And then that was more or less it. So before I show you what it looks like, just here's a reminder what it did look like in a couple of scenes. Again, it wasn't the end of the world. However, this is what it looks like now that he does walk in 8 directions. So to me, I know it's not perfect, and in fact weirdly the one I'd done from Procreate years ago was probably better than the one I'd just done in Procreate Dreams, but that doesn't matter so much. What does matter is just that in these scenes with more depth, he now sort of doesn't glide around quite so much, and also when he turns to face something, he kind of turns in like a 3D space more, or he has more directions to cycle through. And even though it's obviously a very cartoony style, it kind of implies that he's more of a real thing within that space. And so whilst it probably could bear with some tweaking, I'm pretty happy with how that looks overall, and I think as much as it was something I was putting off for a really long time, I'm kind of glad I got it done.
Big Ol' Boss Inc., market-leading disruptor, titan of industry, and most importantly, employer of the greatest assistant manager in the whole world. Me, Tom Barron, Esquire. Or at least that'd be the case if I wasn't so ridiculously late for work right now. Like so late I'm pretty much early for tomorrow. And trust me when I say this really is not a good day to be late. Luckily, when you've worked here as long as I have, you learn a few company secrets. Like how to sneak into the building without our mighty leader, Mr. Biggleboss, catching you on the cameras out front. Even if the solution is a bit, let's say, unsanitary. But I guess that kind of ingenuity, that gusto, that chutzpah is how I got to where I am today. A cushy job with largely intangible duties that I can mostly delegate to everybody else. And a totally flexible work schedule. Even if that last part isn't officially recognized by the company. Either way, you could say that old Tom Barron's not afraid to get his hands dirty, or his sneakers for that matter, in the pursuit of doing the absolute bare minimum without getting fired. If you ask me, I'm the master of the American workplace. I'm the bastion of bureaucracy. I'm the king of KPIs. And I am so late. But hey, if all else fails, just turn up, do the work, and remember the company motto. There is nothing sinister happening at Big Ol' Boss Inc. Okay, here goes nothing.
Yes, Mr. Briggleboss. No, Mr. Briggleboss.
So stay alert. He'll be through here. I know it.
Of course. Everything is in place. The supervisor is ready, and the subject will be here soon.
Good. Then it's time to begin again.